It's time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show focusing on fishing, hunting, outdoor recreation, destinations, and conservation in the region where you live and play. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you by Mack's Lure Company, Sportsman's Warehouse, Leupold and Stevens, Stehekin Valley Ranch, and Wallowa County. And now, let's see what's going on in the field and on the water with your host, John Cruz.
Welcome aboard. In case you hadn't heard, there's a new boss at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, at least for a little while. His name is Joe Storr, and he was selected to be the director of this agency on an interim basis, while a national search for a new director goes on. More than a few folks in the know have told me they may have a hard time finding anyone who wants the job. The last director, Jim Unsworth, had a big game management background forged in the state of Idaho. That left him unprepared to navigate the tricky waters of salmon and steelhead management, influenced by the federal government, who has rules to conserve them, Native American tribes demanding their court-given share with varying levels of accountability to fish and game laws depending upon the tribe, with commercial interests who also want their share, and last but certainly not least, the sport anglers who just want a chance to take home a few fish during their next on-the-water adventure. It would be fair to say Mr. Unsworth was unable to navigate the shifting currents, and the rapids of this river ate him up like a Class 5 monster. He's out, Joe Storr's in, and God help him and whoever else steps in to replace him on a long-term basis. I sometimes think only the good Lord himself could do this job and make all the different user groups happy in the process. This week on Northwestern Outdoors, we've got some great audio for you recorded at the Washington Sportsman Show in Puyallup and also from our studio in Washington's Wenatchee Valley, known as the apple capital of the world, with some nice hunting, fishing, hiking, and camping thrown in on the side. In fact, we'll start off close to our home talking to Travis Dawson at the Sportsman's Warehouse store there about catching lake whitefish. It's an intriguing species that gets very little pressure, but they supposedly taste good and fight good, and they can get up to 10 pounds in size. Travis will tell you how to catch them, and we'll tell you where to find them, so you can catch them too all over the greater Northwest. For our extended Max Minute, we're going to bring you part one of a three-part series focusing on kokanee fishing destinations. This week, Ray Bailey will join us to tell you about the great kokanee fishery found at Lake Roosevelt in Northeast Washington. We'll continue to talk about fishing, but also about hunting and summertime trail rides when we talk to James Whitescaver, the owner of Montana Rivers and Ridges Outfitter. He's got a nice lodge south of Missoula, and his playground is the Bitterroot River and Bitterroot National Forest. Finally, we'll preview two Sportsman shows coming up this month in Yakima and Wenatchee with Merle Shuyler, and also share outdoors news from Idaho and Wyoming. But before we get into all of that, it's time for another edition of Sportsman Spotlight. This week, David Sparks talks to Andrew McKean, that resident of eastern Montana and class act of a person who, until recently, was the editor of Outdoor Life magazine. He became a casualty of corporate consolidation and was let go. To the corporate bean counters and executives who made this decision, you made a mistake. I suspect you're going to have a hard time maintaining that high bar of excellence that your former editor had established when he was at the helm.
Hunter Locavores, David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight, saw this comment in the magazine Outdoor Life. Quote, "While hipsters would like the world to believe they invented the demand for organic, free-range, locally sourced meat, hunters know better." End quote. Called Andrew McKean, who's the chief editor of Outdoor Life.
We're trying to make the case of this series of stories that hunters are the original locavores. People are just now starting to catch on to the fact that we need to eat healthy, we need to eat close to home. Well, that's something that hunters have known for a long, long time.
Having said that, from winter cow elk hunts to high-volume pigeon shoots, does the article give us hunting strategies?
That's a really good question. In fact, that was one of the things that I struggled with as the editor putting it together. Is, we wanted it to have a certain amount of reader service. Here's how to go do it. But we also just wanted to celebrate the fact that there's all this abundance around us. We're conditioned to thinking about meat, especially wild meat, in the confines of our standard seasons. The deer opener, everybody's aware of that and what that means. What that story was intended to do was to open people's eyes to the wild abundance that you might not think about. Little accounts of feral iguana hunts in Florida, the feral pigeons, and even some of the wild pigeons that are available. Obviously, everybody knows the feral hog issue in much of the southern United States. We wanted to really focus those opportunities on something like, hey, don't be limited to your standard deer, elk, upland bird seasons. There's a wild world of meat all around you. Go get it.
Point taken, will do, and thanks.
Farmers and ranchers, they're tasked with feeding a global population, so that's a big task in front of them.
Northwest Farm Credit Services Montana President Bill Perry.
We're a major provider of credit and financial services for those farmers and ranchers. Our mission is to be that consistent and reliable source of credit. As we look forward, the obstacles that farmers and ranchers have to overcome, I think farm credit is very relevant in helping them do that.
Northwest Farm Credit Services, here to help you grow. Equal opportunity provider and employer, equal housing lender.
If you eat, then agriculture is important to you. And if you need to stay up to date on what's going on in agriculture, then tune to the Ag Information Network of the West. Fewer and fewer farmers and ranchers are feeding more and more people globally. We cover the issues from the field to the floor of the house and beyond. You can depend on the Ag Information Network for the information and stories you need. Join us online at aginfo.net and now on Facebook and Twitter. For Ag News, tune to the Ag Information Network of the West.
You can fish from a boat, or you can stand on shore, or you can use a pontoon with carpet on the floor.
Next on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, we're going to talk about a fish that not too many people fish for here in the Northwest. It's the lake whitefish. Now, a lot of you who are fly anglers and who fish streams are familiar with the mountain whitefish, but the lake whitefish can weigh several pounds in size, and it's found in some lakes here in the Northwest, to include Banks Lake and Potholes Reservoir. With us here to tell you more about how to catch these fish is Travis Dawson. He's the fishing department manager at the Sportsman's Warehouse store in East Wenatchee. Travis, great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, John. It's good to be here.
So, Travis, I have never caught one of these lake whitefish before. I know they're in Banks Lake, and people fish for them there. I've seen them in net surveys at Potholes Reservoir. I've seen them up to 6-7 pounds in size. Have you caught some of these before, Travis?
Yes, I have, John.
Tell me where you're catching them, and the first question right out of the chute, how do they fight?
Well, actually, John, as far as your first question, how do they fight? They fight very, very well. They're actually a very fun fish, very strong fish. They've got a V'd tail, large pectoral fins. Yeah, very strong fish. They're very surprising, a lot of fun.
And are you catching them out of Banks Lake?
Yes, it's been in Banks Lake.
I don't want to have you give up too many secrets, but that is a big lake. It's like 25-plus miles long. Can you narrow it down a little bit in terms of where you're fishing for them and what time of year?
I've caught them throughout the whole water system there in Banks, but mainly along the can line area. There's a good population of those fish along the can line area.
And is this primarily a winter fishery through the open water or through the ice?
These fish can be fished year-round. A lot of folks do concentrate on these fish during ice. But there's, just before ice, just after ice, very, very good times as well.
So tell me how we go about catching some of these fish.
Well, John, there's multiple ways. They can be caught from shore. They can be caught, in a boat. They can be caught while you're on ice. They're actually a fairly easy fish to actually catch. They're a little finicky at times, just like any other bottom fish, but they have a tendency to really fool you. It's a very light bite, and it takes a little practice to get used to how the fish bite, because it's a very subtle bite for the most part. There are times when they're aggressive and they'll hit it pretty strong, but for the most part, it's a very, very light bite. So it does take some getting used to as far as reading the bite and getting in tune with that. But once you do, it's actually a lot of fun. And there's multiple techniques, and we can get into that. But each technique is going to be a little bit different. Whether it be from shore, whether it be from a boat, whether it be from ice. Very similar between ice and in a boat, because you're basically fishing vertical.
Well, let's start with that. Let's talk with that vertical presentation. Are we talking jigs?
Yes, we are. Actually, there's multiple ways. There's jigging lures, regular jigs as well. It's very common to use a drop shot method as well. Some of the lures that are used are Castmasters, Swedish pimples, forage minnows, blade baits, things of that sort.
And what about size? What about color?
You know, I found that color hasn't really been too big of an issue for me as far as size. Fairly small presentation. You don't want a real large presentation, at least not for the normal. It really depends on what time of year and what kind of fish they're actually feeding on and how much they've grown. And that will pretty much indicate. So later on in the seasons, you're going to want to go with a little bit larger baits. But earlier in the seasons, you definitely want to go smaller.
So are we talking like 1/16 of an ounce or even smaller than that?
You know, a lot of times I'm running a 32nd.
Okay, that's small.
Sometimes a 64th.
Oh, wow.
Stuff.
Okay, that's good to know. So what about the shore angler? Is he just casting out a night crawler off the bottom or something else?
Well, you know, everyone's got their own little method. You know, it's some guys use shrimp, some guys use night crawlers, some guys use eggs. It's really a preference on what you prefer to fish with. A lot of the technique is used with a bobber. Believe it or not, it's just simple bobber off of shore. But it's specific times of year when you're going to be able to catch them offshore, and that's basically when they're, in the spawning stage, when they're up on the shallows. Otherwise, they're out in a little bit deeper water, and it's pretty tough to get to them. You can get to them with a sliding bobber technique, but it's a little bit more difficult.
But it sounds like you have to be right off the bottom for these fish, whether you're from shore or fishing from a boat or fishing on top of the ice. Is that correct?
That is correct. You can fish for them suspended at times, but for the most part, those fish are going to be right on the bottom. I'm usually within the bottom 12 inches to 24 inches of water.
And when it comes to fishing for lake whitefish from shore, when you're using bait, are you using a pretty small hook? What I've seen is they seem to have pretty small mouths.
You know, they do have a small mouth, and it's surprising how large of a hook they can actually, take. But I prefer a smaller hook. It's a little bit easier to use the bait because I'm using pretty small bait. And a lot of it depends. You know, if you're drop shotting things of that sort, I'll drop 2-inch, 2.5-inch minnows, and that's actually a very, very good technique from shore as well, other than a bobbers with a drop shotting technique. You know, hook size wise, it's a preference. If you're getting hit and you're getting bit on, but you're just not hooking up, I recommend going to a little bit smaller hook.
So are we talking for a starter size, at least as you're exploring this fishery, maybe a size 6 bait hook or egg hook?
Or smaller, yeah.
Okay, so an 8 or a 10.
Correct, yes.
Okay, well, there you go, folks. There's some great advice on how to catch lake whitefish. And before I let you go, I do have one more question. How do they eat, and how do you prepare them for the best eating?
You know, John, there's a lot of preferences there as well. They're like a lot of the other, panfish, whitefish, like walleye. They're a very mild fish, so they go well with pretty much everything. You can bake them, you can fry them, you can deep fry them. They make great fish tacos. As far as preparation is concerned, it's just like any other whitefish. Very, very simple fish. They're actually a very, very good fish. Just because they're a mild fish, they don't have a real strong flavor to them, so they go well with many, many meals.
Okay, well, if you are looking for something new to try, a new fishery to spread your wings into, it looks like lake whitefish might be the fishery for you. Again, you can find them in eastern Washington in reservoirs like Banks Lake and Potholes Reservoir. But Travis, I understand that lake whitefish are found in waters throughout the Northwest, throughout our listening area from Wyoming to Oregon and Washington. It's just a matter of contacting your local Fish and Wildlife agency to figure out where they might be.
That is correct. They are in many bodies of water that people do not realize. They have very low pressure, and a lot of folks just don't know they're there. Yeah.
Okay, lake whitefish, give it a whirl, folks, especially if you're going stir crazy and wondering what you can fish for right now. There's an option for you. And if you need tackle for whitefish, go to your local Sportsman's Warehouse. There's like 85 stores across the nation. There's sure to be one near you. And if you want some more advice on catching lake whitefish, stop by the East Wenatchee Sportsman's Warehouse and talk to the fishing department manager, Travis Dawson. Travis, thanks for sharing this with us today on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Hey, thank you, John. Have a good day.
Thanks again, Travis. You know, I did a little research about lake whitefish and where else they're found in the Northwest, and I can tell you there's not a lot of data about them, but I can tell you this. In Montana, a couple of lakes that have lake whitefish are Flathead Lake and Fort Peck Reservoir, and if you're wondering what the state record is for Montana, it's a 10-pounder. The state record in Idaho is a 6.5 pound lake whitefish caught in 2010 out of Ponderay Lake in the northern panhandle of the state. In Oregon, a 4 pound, 14 ounce lake whitefish is the record, caught out of Crane Prairie Reservoir in 1994. As for Wyoming and South Dakota, no information on where lake whitefish are found and what the records may be. There are whitefish records, but they appear to be mountain whitefish records in both states caught out of rivers. So there you go. A few more ideas on where to target lake whitefish this winter or any other time you want to try something a little different.
Maple Lake, French Lake, Grand Lake, Cedar Lake, Pleasant Lake, Clear Lake, Bass Lake, Collar Lake, Goose Lake, Gull Lake, Round Lake, Bear Lake, Rice Lake, Sugar Lake, Mud Lake, Long Lake, Ant Lake, Swan Lake, Lake of the Woods. Oh, I fish everywhere.
Sportsman's Warehouse is America's premier outfitter and has the quality gear you need for hunting, fishing, camping, and more. Our knowledgeable and friendly staff will help you find the right products so you get the most out of your time in the field or on the water. In addition to stocking superior clothing and outdoor equipment, we offer in-store events and seminars so you can enjoy a successful adventure. With over 70 stores located in the United States, it's easy to find a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you. Find out more at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
Back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's time for another Mack's Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Mack's Lure Company, and we are bringing you a 3-part kokanee destination series with pro staffers from Mack's Lure Company. Today, we're talking to Ray Bailey, and the lake we're talking about is Lake Roosevelt in Northeast Washington. Ray, great to have you back on the show.
How you doing?
So, Ray, Lake Roosevelt is really turned into a big kokanee fishery. What is prime time for kokanee fishing on this 100-plus mile impoundment of the Columbia River?
The next month and a half.
Mid-March.
February and mid-March are the best.
And what part of the lake are you going to find the kokanee in?
You're going to find them in the lower limit from Keller Ferry to Grand Coulee Dam.
The kokanee have gotten really big. I mean, 16-plus inch fish are not uncommon. I understand last year several 4 or 5 pounders were caught.
Right now there's a lot of 3 to 5 pounders being caught, and most of that's right now has been in the Keller area.
All right. How do you catch them using Mack's Lure products?
Wiggle hoochie or the cha-cha, tip them with maggots, fish right on the surface.
I am surprised to hear that. Right on the surface? So are you using any weight at all, or are you just fishing them behind a double D Dodger or a sling blade?
The Dodgers are going to give you 4 to 6 foot depending on your speed, and you want your speed at 1.5 to 1.6. Tip them with maggots, and you're going to catch all the fish you need.
Does color matter?
There's 4 colors that are favored on Roosevelt. That's chartreuse, orange, pink, and forest green.
All right, one more time with the lure to use.
The cha-cha or the wiggle hoochie.
The cha-cha and the wiggle hoochie, both great kokanee lures from Mack's Lure Company. Look for them at a sporting goods store near you, along with the sling blade and the double D Dodger. And if you can't find them there, just go online to maxlure.com. Thanks, Ray.
You're welcome.
Looking for that extra something that will get more salmon or trout into your boat? Then check out the Double D Dodger from Mack's Lure. The Double D does double duty and helps you catch more fish. The Double D's flash attracts lunkers, and the Dodger's patented stop-start action works wonders to get those fish biting. The Double D does even more by acting as a side planer to get your bait away from the boat where the fish are more likely to be and more apt to strike. The Double D Dodger. It's the Dodger you've got to have from Mack's Lure.
You demand quality performance from your binoculars, whether you use them in the field, on the water, or at a stadium. But you don't want to spend a fortune. That's where the BX McKenzie binoculars from Leupold come in. These armored, waterproof binoculars are both comfortable and dependable. Look for your McKenzie binoculars at quality sporting goods retailers near you, to include your Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, or Northwest Bi-Mart stores. BX McKenzie, bringing your world into sharper focus, only from Leupold.
Two huge events for hunters and anglers are coming to the Northwest. The Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show at Portland's Expo Center with even more outfitters, retailers, boat dealers, and free seminars galore. You won't want to miss these shows, February 7th to the 11th in Portland. Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're broadcasting from the Washington Sportsman Show at Puyallup, and we're talking to a Montana outfitter offering both hunts and fishing and horseback trail rides. His name is James Whitescaver. He owns Montana Rivers and Ridges Outfitter. James, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So, James, I'll be honest. What drew my attention to you and your booth and why I've got you on the air here is I go to a lot of sportsman shows. I talk to a fair number of Montana outfitters that offer the same thing you offer, but they're all offered in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. That's not your playground.
No, we actually operate in the Bitterroot National Forest in the Bitterroot Valley.
So for our listeners, maybe in Oregon and Washington who aren't familiar with that part of Montana, exactly where is it?
We're about 3 hours east of Spokane, and our area starts just south of Missoula.
And folks, this is some beautiful country down there. Basically, you go south of Missoula towards Hamilton. You got the Bitterroot River that flows through there, and then you have this national forest with all sorts of outdoors recreation possibilities, and it butts right up against the state of Idaho, doesn't it?
It does.
So let's go ahead and work through some of the things that you offer, and we'll just kind of work through the seasons here. We're going to start off with the spring because you have black bear hunts. Tell our listeners about those.
We do spring black bear hunts. They're a spot and stalk hunt. We're able to hunt these bears right out of hibernation when they're hungry and they're coming out into the open areas where we can glass them from long distance and then try and plant a stalk. It's a really fun hunt, kind of laid back. Spend a lot of time behind our binoculars.
And I was doing some statistical work recently, and it turns out Montana has got some of the highest number of huntable black bears, especially when it comes to spring bear hunts in all of North America.
We do, and we get some really good bears, too. They may not weigh as much as some of the bears in Wisconsin or even like down in California because they're hibernation, but they still square out and their skulls still score on the Boone and Crockett scale just as well.
All right, so those are the bear hunts, but I know that most people are coming to you for elk and deer hunts in the Bitterroot National Forest. Tell our listeners about those. I know those are in high demand and you don't have a whole lot of those to offer.
Right. We book out pretty quick on those. We still have a few left spots open for 2018, and we're starting to book some guys already in 2019. We're kind of unique. We offer a lodge-based hunt in the Bitterroot Valley. We are able to be very mobile because of it and move to where the elk are. I did backcountry hunts for years, and the problem I'd run into is we'd spend all this time getting into the backcountry and setting a camp and getting hunters in there, and something would happen and the elk would move out of the area. We'd then spend the rest of the time looking for elk that weren't there. With the lodge-based hunts, we're able to go into an area. If they're not there, come back out and move into another area, and our success rates have shown it. They just keep climbing each year. So
that is really clever, and frankly, I think a lot of folks are going to love coming back to a lodge at night, being pampered, sleeping in a comfortable bed. Where exactly is the lodge located?
Our lodge is located up Sweathouse Creek. It borders Forest Service property. We're able to actually hunt right out of the lodge. Most of the time we move further beyond that and use a pickup to go to a place or even load up the horses with the horse trailer and drive to a trailhead and use the horses as a vehicle to access areas that aren't easily accessible.
I love it so far. Now, looking at your booth, I see both white-tailed deer and mule deer. Are both found in the Bitterroot National Forest? Are both being hunted?
Yes, and actually our season is a rifle season that allows us to hunt deer and elk at the same time. And then we also have the ability to hunt mule deer and whitetail in the same areas as well.
Whoa, all right. So let's say I'm willing to spend a fair amount of money with you. Could I, in theory, book a hunt where I could come home with a bull and a whitetail buck and a mule deer buck all in the same trip?
No, you're going to be limited to...
Darn it!
You're going to be limited to either a whitetail or a mule deer.
That's still really awesome, though. Just the fact that you offer a combo trip. I'm not sure I've heard of this before. Is anyone else doing this or advertising it in Montana?
I think they are, but they're going to be in the Bob Marshall on a pack-in trip.
Okay, this sounds great. And we're not even done with hunting, because come wintertime, you've got something else for folks to hunt, and it's a top-tier predator.
Correct. In Montana, we're still able to chase mountain lions or cougars with hound dogs. So we utilize our hound dogs. They're our buddies. They ride around with us in the pickup. And we have 2 hunts on that. We have a special draw season that goes from December 1st till January 31st. If you're able to draw this tag, then you're able to be flexible and have better weather. You know, if you're flexible, I can say, hey, we got some weather coming, come on out, and we do a week-long hunt on that, and with a really high success rate on that hunt. Our next hunt is a general season, and we're only able to run that the first week of February, and that's just a general over-the-counter tag. Same thing with the black bear tag. It is also a general, just over-the-counter tag.
Fantastic. But folks, if you do want to apply for one of those elk and deer tags, you better do it quick, because the deadline is in March for non-residents in Montana. So we pretty much covered 3 seasons of hunting here, but now it's time to talk summertime, because you offer fly fishing, and I love the Bitterroot River. It's a real special stream that's got some really nice trout in it. Tell our listeners about the trips you offer there.
Right, the Bitterroot River is kind of in our backyard. We're able to do day float trips and wade trips for fly fishing on the Bitterroot River. It's a phenomenal river. We have a great stonefly hatches. We got a stonefly coming up right now. It's going to be the squallow stonefly. It'll be the first one of the year. Then come June, we're going to have our great big salmon flies. They're an absolute blast. We're able to fish those on the west fork of the Bitterroot, the east fork of the Bitterroot, and the main stem of the Bitterroot. And then after that, we have our golden stones. And if anybody likes throwing big bugs towards big fish, it's a lot of fun. And then later on in the fall, we get a lot of smaller mayfly hatches. And if someone is really into head hunting and casting to rising fish, that's a lot of fun as well.
Again, we're broadcasting from the Washington Sportsman Show in Puyallup. If you hear some background noise, that's what it is. We're talking to James Whitescaver. He is the owner of Montana Rivers and Ridges Outfitter. You just heard about the fly fishing he offers, the hunts he offers. One more thing to touch on, you've got summertime horseback trail rides, too.
We do, yeah. Like I say, on my permit, I have a forest-wide permit for the Bitterroot National Forest, and I'm also able to offer trail rides on that. We can run up to 4 riders at a time, and they're either a half-day or a full-day trip. We can do a destination trip to a reservoir. We'll set up a beautiful lunch, and you can sit down and relax for an hour or two, enjoy your lunch, and there's beautiful scenery in the background.
Maybe even go for a swim on a hot Montana summer day. Sounds like a great time to me. So, folks, whether you're after a hunting trip in somewhere a little different than the Bob Marshall Wilderness, or fly fishing the Bitterroot River and other western Montana streams that they fish as well, or just going for a summertime horseback trail ride, you better go ahead and look up a website. And that website is mtriversandridges.com. That's mtriversandridges.com. Ask for James Whitescaver. He's the owner. He lives in Stevensville, Montana, and he'll hook you up with one of these great Montana adventures. James, thanks for telling us about this on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you.
If you're after really big game, it only makes sense to have the best scope you can put on your rifle. That's why you want the Leupold VX6 HD. This high-definition scope gives you sharpened clarity, and the Twilight Max light management system gives you the sight advantage you need at dawn and dusk when those big bucks, bulls, and Bruins are on the move. Add on our lifetime gold ring guarantee, and you've got the rifle scope of your dreams. It's the Leupold VX6 HD. Look for it at a quality sporting goods store near you and at leupold.com.
Stehekin Valley Ranch may well be one of the most spectacular places to visit in the lower 48. Located at the headwaters of Lake Chelan in Washington's North Cascades, we can only be reached by boat, plane, or foot. Stehekin takes back simple pleasures and adventures. Hike, fish, kayak, ride a horse, or just relax while soaking in the views. You can do it all at our family-owned ranch. Book your summer stay now at StehekinValleyRanch.com. That's StehekinValleyRanch.com.
John Cruz here. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about two Sportsman shows coming up in Central Washington in February. The first one is the long-running Central Washington Sportsman Show. That's going to happen February 16th through the 18th at the Sun Dome in Yakima. The second is the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show in the Town Toyota Center, February 23rd through the 25th. It's the Central Washington Sportsman Show and the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show. Find out more at SchuylerProductions.com.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a nationwide group working to keep public lands in public hands so future generations can enjoy what we enjoy. Join the group that makes a difference. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and it's time for some outdoors news. Unfortunately, we're starting with bad news out of Hagerman, Idaho, where we have to report the third annual Hagerman Bird Festival, scheduled for next week, has been postponed. CJ Holmes, who we had on the show earlier this year to tell you about this event, said they just couldn't generate enough interest in a February event. However, they are hoping to try again in June when the weather is a little more conducive to being outdoors for a day of bird watching. Follow the Hagerman Bird Festival Facebook page for updates about that. Our next story is about bucket biology. The struggle, ladies and gentlemen, it's real. You see, some fish just don't play well with others, and just because you might like to catch walleye doesn't mean you ought to catch a bucket full of them and dump them into a trout lake. One case in point is Wyoming's Buffalo Bill Reservoir near Yellowstone National Park. Brett French recently wrote an article about Wyoming Game and Fish's efforts to get a handle on this problem. Some 15 years ago, someone dumped some of those marble eyes into this well-known trout water. They rapidly reproduced, and thanks to a plentiful food supply, namely the trout in the lake, those walleye became well established there by 2008. Today, walleye suppression is a full-time endeavor. Regulations require you keep and kill any walleye you catch there, and biologists have fitted radio telemetry devices onto some of the walleye they've caught so they can figure out where they're spawning in the shallow water and then gill net those walleye to get them out of there. It's a long, drawn-out battle, and at the moment, Wyoming Game and Fish appears to have the upper hand. But there have been plenty of quality trout fisheries destroyed by bucket biologists who want to start catching walleye, pike, perch, or panfish out of their favorite lake. If you see somebody doing this, call your local Fish and Wildlife Agency, because these bucket biologists aren't doing you or anyone else any favors with their stalking efforts. Next on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, it's time to talk Sportsman shows again, because we've got two coming up in the month of February to tell you about, both taking place in Central Washington. The first one is the Central Washington Sportsman Show. The second one, the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show. And with us here to tell you more about them is the man who puts them on, Merle Shuyler. Merle, great to have you back on the air.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
So, Merle, let's start off with the Central Washington Sportsman Show, February 16th through the 18th at the Sun Dome in Yakima. There's a couple of attractions there that I think are going to draw a lot of folks, including the Horn and Antler competition. Tell our listeners about that.
Well, that's something that we've done every year since the first year, and this will be the 29th year that we've done this show. And it's where the local hunters bring in the deer, elk, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, whatever they got during the previous season. Or it can actually also, John, be a trophy that their grandfather shot in 1910 or something that's never been scored. So we have official scores from Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett at the show. These animals are scored, put on display, and at the end we give out ribbons and a few prizes to the top heads.
Well, that would be quite an honor to have a winning mount in that competition. You've also got an attraction that I think is going to attract folks both young and old, a walk on the wild side. What's that all about?
Well, we had them at the show last year, and they're from based out of south of Portland. I think it's Canby, Oregon, and they have different animals. It's a rescue animal park that they take in animals that would not be able to find a home otherwise, and most of them are young, and they grow them up, and then they try to find a home for them, or they keep them. And they were at the Yakima show last year. What's kind of a funny twist this year is their main animal this year that they're bringing is a mountain lion, is a cougar. And last year it was basically a cub at the exhibit. And this year it is a full-grown cougar. So people that saw that cougar last year as a fairly large kitten will see that cougar this year is being close to full-grown.
That'll be very cool indeed. Let's turn our attention to the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show. That's going to go off February 23rd through the 25th at the Town Toyota Center in Wenatchee. And you've got a really interesting attraction there. It's not a walk on the wild side. I understand you've hijacked some of Santa's reindeer to bring to the show.
Yeah, Christmas is over, so you kind of wonder what are these reindeer going to do after Christmas, and so I thought, why not bring them to a Sportsman show? So I lined up, it's called Reindeer Express. They're up out of Reardon, Washington, and I talked to Ed, the owner, and he thought he'd like to give it a shot too. So we're having 4 reindeer. They're going to be on display, and then on Sunday only, we're going to allow the patrons to go in and pet these reindeer and take pictures, close-up pictures of them. On Sunday only, on Kids Day, and it'll be a time thing. Because these reindeer, they're wild animals, but they're somewhat domesticated. But because of that, they cannot be bothered the whole day of the show. So every hour, we're going to allow pictures and petting to take place, and then they'll have to rest for an hour. So the schedule will be in the program.
That sounds really neat. I think a lot of people are going to get a kick out of that. Another thing the kids are going to really enjoy at both shows is the Lunker Pond, where they can reel in some trout, too.
Yeah, it's really popular with the kids. Again, it's been with us since the very first show. And the Yakima is courtesy of Les Schwab Tires. Fishing will be free on Sundays, Friday and Saturday. You will pay to fish at the Yakima Fish Pond. But at Wenatchee, courtesy of Hooked on Toys and a number of other sponsors, fishing is free all 3 days at Wenatchee. So the kids can come in and catch a fish or two and then go take in the rest of the things that the kids can do, like the archery range and the fly tying workshop and that type of thing at Wenatchee.
Well, at both shows, there's also going to be dozens and dozens of exhibitors, so you can book trips, you can buy some sporting goods items for very good prices, and all sorts of other stuff, too. But one thing that I know is drawing more and more serious hunters, serious anglers to these sportsman shows, especially yours, Merle, are the seminar speakers. You've got a really good lineup. What are some of the big draws that you expect folks are going to be lining up the theater for this year?
Well, at Yakima, we have walleye covered. Jacob Munden from the Tri-Cities, who's a guide, but he fishes a lot of different fish, but he likes to specialize in walleye. He'll be at the Yakima. Shane Magnuson, from who you know, used to live up by Wenatchee, is now living down Home Valley, down by the Lower Columbia. He'll be doing salmon seminars. Rob Phillips is going to be doing a deer hunting seminar plus fishing Lake Roosevelt. And then at Wenatchee, try to get some local people with knowledge for local fishing plus some out-of-towners. But Rick Graybill, that works at Hooked on Toys, has written a book on the kokanee fishing in Lake Chelan. He's going to be doing a talk on Austin Mosier fishes Lake Roosevelt. Pretty much most of the winter, he'll be there doing a Lake Roosevelt seminar. And Stuart Hurd from Wenatchee will be doing some salmon. Jared Gibbons from up at Okanagan will be doing salmon and kokanee. So, yeah, we've got, you want to think about a fishing seminar, we should have it covered.
Sounds like a star-studded lineup for me, especially when it comes to well-known personalities throughout Washington State who really know their stuff. We've got to go, but folks, again, the 2 shows we're talking about here, the Central Washington Sportsman Show, February 16th through the 18th at the Sun Dome in Yakima, and the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show, February 23rd through the 25th at the Town Toyota Center. You can find out more information by going to SchuylerProductions.com. That's Schuyler with a Y. Productions.com. Check it out and be sure to show up for one of these great sportsman shows. Thanks as always, Merle.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Sportsman's Warehouse is America's premier outfitter and has the quality gear you need for hunting, fishing, camping, and more. Our knowledgeable and friendly staff will help you find the right products so you get the most out of your time in the field or on the water. In addition to stocking superior clothing and outdoor equipment, we offer in-store events and seminars so you can enjoy a successful adventure. With over 70 stores located in the United States, it's easy to find a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you. Find out more at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
Backcountry hunters and anglers, the men and women working hard to keep public lands in public hands. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
We've got time for one more shot of Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
I'm glad you're back because we've got some pretty interesting upcoming events to tell you about, including an appearance by the 2017 Bassmaster Angler of the Year, Brandon Polinick. Nixon's Marine is hosting him at their facility on Tacoma Mall Boulevard in Tacoma on February 17th. Lunch is at noon, and then there's going to be a seminar at 1 o'clock featuring not only Brandon, but also other members of the Nixon's Marine Pro team like Ron Hobbs and Jonas Pettit. The date again, February 17th. The time is noon, and the location is Nixon's Marine in Tacoma. There's some more Sportsman shows going on too this month, which includes the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show in Portland at the Expo Center through Sunday until 6 p.m. And there's Joe Pate's Exposure Shows, which will present a long-running show at the Douglas County Fairgrounds in Roseburg, February 16th through the 18th, before pulling up stakes and putting them down again the following week in Medford at the Jackson County Fairgrounds for a popular sportsman show that'll run February 23rd to the 25th. The Great Rocky Show is going to continue its tour in Montana. It's coming to the Brick Breedman Fieldhouse in Bozeman, February 23rd to the 25th, and you won't want to miss Rattlesnake Dave and his Texas Rattlesnake Show there. Finally, don't forget about the Fly Fishing Show, featuring fly fishing celebrity speakers, lots of exhibitors to book trips with around the country and the world, as well as chances to learn how to tie flies and cast better. That's all going to happen at the Linwood Convention Center in Western Washington, February 17th and the 18th. And another event taking place both February 17th and 18th is the Fly Fishing Show at the Linwood Convention Center in Linwood, Washington. That looks to be a great one for fly anglers. Are you about showed out? We haven't even gotten into March yet, but we'll save that for another week or two. But we do have to let you know about one more event, a can't-miss event coming up Saturday the 17th in Wenatchee. It's the annual Wenatchee Sportsmen's Association game feed. It'll take place at the Red Lion in town, and I'm thrilled to once again be the master of ceremonies for this great event. By the time you hear this, it might be sold out again, but there may be a few tickets left, so you might want to go to Sportsman's Warehouse, Hooked on Toys, see if you can get one of those last remaining tickets, or go to the WSA website at WSASSOC.org to attend the Wenatchee Sportsmen's Association game feed February 17th. And now, it's time for your Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week with a little Northwest history thrown in as well. When Lewis and Clark journeyed to the Pacific from Missouri in 1805, they ate a lot of wild game and fish along the way. However, when they arrived at the confluence of the Snake and Columbia Rivers in October of that year, hungry and tired, the meal they craved the most was A, salmon, B, venison, or C, dog. If you think you know the answer, go to our Facebook page. You'll find it at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Like our page, look for the post, give us your answer there. Or if you prefer, contact us on our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. What was that tasty meal that those explorers on the Lewis and Clark expedition wanted more than anything else in October of 1805? Was it A, salmon, B, venison, or C, a dog? I look forward to hearing your answers, and one person who gets this right is going to win the $25 gift card we give away every week from Sportsman's Warehouse. While you're on the web, be sure to check out YouTube and Podbean. I tell you this because we have podcasts of our show available there, just in case you want to catch up on one you missed. Our YouTube channel is very simple, Northwestern Outdoors with one word, just subscribe. And our Podbean channel is America Outdoors Radio. Again, simply subscribe and you'll hear audio on both places from both of our shows. We are out of here for another week, but we will be at the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show in Portland through Sunday, and I hope you'll stop by and see me because I'd love to chat with you about the show, about fishing, hunting, or about destination ideas, and about anything else you like to do when you're playing outside. Until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.